All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from StreetScores, and I really wanted to talk about this last night when it first happened, but I just couldn't find the time. But either way, the Washington Commanders went and signed interior offensive lineman Nate Herbig. And hey, the big in his last name is true, man. This is a huge guy. We got to dive into whether or not he's a free agency still, because I would argue he is. Again, of course, I got to back that up with some facts and some stats. Also, the Washington Commanders lost Dante Fowler to the Dallas Cowboys. Is this a big loss for the Washington Commanders? We have to, of course, break down this pattern that the Cowboys are displaying with the signings and trades that they've made this offseason. Boy, they just think they're smarter than everybody else, huh? And also, who could be a potential replacement for us losing Dante Fowler? Azeez Ojulari, who's available out there? But before we get into everything, and I have a fun fact for you at the end of this video. Make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned, follow the content. I'm going to have to update it on everything burgundy and gold, so make sure you stay tuned. I'm still working on the 80 Goldman. I'm still working on the Javon Kinlaw. It is on the way, I promise. Eventually, when we have just a down day with not a lot of news and I'm not super busy outside of YouTube, I promise y'all those videos are on the way. The tabs and the windows for all of my notes are right here. I just got to get the time to do it. But either way, let's go ahead and dive into this video, man. Let's get it. Adam. And before we get into anything, I have to take the time to properly thank 3 people who donated to the Cash App the past couple of days. So first of all, big shouts out to my dog, Chris T, and appreciate the message as well, man. Big salute, really appreciate that. And then also shouts out to my boy, One Skins Fan for Life. Really appreciate that. Yes, sir. And also shouts out to my dog, George Y, and super appreciate the message as well. Hey, man, I'm trying. Either way though, man, again, appreciate y'all. Really appreciate all 3 of y'all, man. That's big love. Really appreciate it. The least I could do is thank y'all in my very next video after y'all have donated, man. So really appreciate y'all. Now let's dive into Nate Herbig first. Shouts out to Jeremy Fowler. He was the first person I saw report this. He said the Commanders are signing offensive lineman Nate Herbig to a 1-year deal per source. 6-year veteran adds Washington's mix at guard. Herbig was hurt last season, but is healthy now. And then, just to let you know, this guy started 30 games in his first 5 seasons. He missed last season with a torn rotator cuff, and he has played for the Eagles, the Jets, and the Steelers. This is a guy that a lot of people may have forgotten about because of that torn rotator cuff that he suffered last year. He was supposed to start for the Steelers last year at center. Like, that was his projection. Like, going into the regular season, this is going to be our starting center. Then he had the rotator cuff injury, so he didn't play. And again, most people outside of like the Steelers fan base forgot about him. But he's only 26 years old, so there's still a lot of potential here. And I believe that we can tap into it. Bobby Johnson elevated the play of our offensive line. We played like a top 12 offensive line last year, but I would not say we were a top 12 talented offensive line. So if Bobby Johnson is a good enough offensive lines coach, you have our run game coordinator, former head coach Anthony Lynn, Cliff Kingsbury is your offensive coordinator. Whatever that combination of geniuses is doing with the offensive line, it's working. So why, when they bring in a guy like Nate Herbig with all of this talent, with all of this size, we're gonna dive into that soon. Like, why can we not assume that, you know, he could potentially be better here than he even previously was throughout the rest of his career? And again, last year, he was supposed to be the starting center for the Steelers. We're bringing him in here to be depth, to be a backup. And again, to really dive into it, he's a really big guy. That's why it's funny that his last name has big in it. Like, he's one of those first off the bus type of guys. He's 6'4", 333 pounds. Like, Dan Quinn and Adam Peters are not playing about getting bigger in the trenches this offseason. You could argue about whether we got better or not on both sides of the trenches, even though I would say that we did. I feel like the only way that we've taken a step back from the 2024 team going into this 2025 team is literally pass rush ability. In any position room, I feel like we've gotten at the very least slightly better. Some rooms I feel like we've gotten way better. Stopping the run, we've gotten way better with this defense. I feel like our offensive line, trading for Larry Tunsil, way better. I feel like our receiver core for Jada Daniels, way better. And at the very least, though, even if you don't agree with us being better, you cannot debate about, there's like no argument against us not being way bigger and stronger at the very least on both sides of the trenches, O-line and D-line. But don't get it confused. Even though Nate was supposed to be the Steelers starting center in 2024 before his injury, he's coming here to purely be a backup. Tyler Biadasz is a top 10 center in the NFL. We're good on starting center for sure, but that's great depth to have. I mean, again, to have another team's potential starter, and he's coming here to be a backup, and he's not even that old. We're not talking about some guy like in his 30s that he's coming here to be a backup because he no longer has the same talent and can produce at the same level that he used to. Again, this guy's only 26 years old. He may not even necessarily be in his prime yet. His best days are quite likely ahead of him. And then on top of that, he also has a nasty streak as well. I mean, a play past the whistle type of guy. Not play to the whistle, play through it. Like knocking people on their backs like a couple of seconds after the play. You know, if anything, you may have to work on getting him to calm down a little bit so he doesn't get penalties. But he's going to fit here very well with like Tyler Biadasz, Samuel Cosme, and some of the other super mean streak, angry attitude offensive linemen that we have, man. If anything, the only thing you got to worry about is calming him down. But you do not have to motivate this guy to go out there and be mean and nasty to opposing defensive linemen. And we need as much as that. I mean, at the very least, in the locker room is possible. Even if you're just a backup, a depth piece, a rotational piece, no matter what position group it is, more guys with that personality only makes your team better. And I went into looking around on Twitter for like some honest opinions from Steelers fans, because even before I like dove into his tape, like before I even looked at his highlights, I tried to watch some all 22 tape on him and things like that. Not like a lot, but just some, so that I'm not just starting to record this video with no self-analysis for this guy that I've like done on my own. But I was curious before I even dove into the tape, how did Steelers fans feel about him? And they basically are generally saying that like he was a good player, and they're only disappointed in him from the fact that he got hurt when he was supposed to be their starting center last year. And they have a lot of good things to say about him. They feel like talent-wise, he is a guy that's worthy of being a starting center in the NFL. And again, the worst thing I've seen from Steelers fans is that at worst, he's a really good backup for your team. And so, hey, this is elite depth right here. Now, of course, we're not just going to go out there and give any signing that's projected to be like a backup, and not even a rotational piece, because with defensive line, you're not expecting these guys to rotate in and out. This is not the cornerback room, the wide receiver room, you know, different other position groups on the team, even like defensive line, linebacker, really any other position group other than quarterback and offensive line. You know, even guys that are considered depth and backups come into the game every now and then. Ideally, this guy never sees the field for us in 2025, but we already know those are unrealistic expectations. Tyler Biadasz got hurt a couple of times last season, and we had to see Michael Dieter go out there at center for us, and it wasn't pretty. And so again, I'm just really happy that I feel like this is a really good signing. Again, it's only but so much of like a high grade. I can't give this like an A+ or something like that because he's not a projected starter, but this is as good of a grade, as high of a grade as you could give to a guy that's projected to be a backup, because again, he was literally supposed to start for the Steelers last year, and Steelers fans were excited about it. Now he's coming here to be a backup. I feel like we've at the very least with this signing improved at backup center, especially over a Michael Dieter, who I was nervous about. When I saw we re-signed him a couple of days ago, it did make me a little sad. I almost shed a slight tear. I mean, I don't hate him, but boy, when he was in the game, it was ugly. And now granted, going from Tyler Biadasz to any other center, there's going to be some drop off, but I definitely believe there will be a far less steep drop off going from like a Tyler Biadasz to Nate Herbig than it was for Tyler Biadasz to Michael Dieter was last year. But again, ideally, Nate Herbig never even has to step onto the field. And then shouts out to Serge the Shooter. He said, when I saw Herbig, I thought it was the linebacker. My eyes got wide, and I ain't gonna lie, when I first saw the notification, I saw Herbig first as well. I was like, oh, okay, we got a good linebacker, but it's his brother. Still a cool pickup, much needed interior offensive line depth. Who knows? He may even push to start. And now if we're talking about a chance for him to potentially start on this offensive line, that pathway would have to come through guard. And he does have experience playing guard with the New York Jets in his other previous stops. Like when I was watching tape on him, I was looking at guard New York Jets tape to kind of project what he could be as far as a backup center, backup interior offensive lineman for this team. So maybe he could even compete for the starting right guard spot until Samuel Cosmi is healthy again, because again, I have Laramie Tunsil at left tackle, Brandon Coleman at left guard, Tyler Biadasz at starting center, and Andrew Wiley at right tackle. The only position I feel like that's up for grabs right now is right guard, and that's only until Samuel Cosmi is 100% ready to go. And who knows, maybe he'll be 100% by week 1. Doubt it after getting ACL surgery just in January. But if Samuel Cosmi is not ready to go, but we have a solid group of guys that, I'm okay with either one of them having to take his place for a minute. Like Trent Scott stepped up and played by far the best I've ever seen him play, stepping onto an NFL field when he moved from tackle to guard after Samuel Cosmi got hurt in that Lions divisional round. I was very pleasantly surprised by that. Then you have Nick Allegretti, who was your starting left guard all year last year. I mean, it's a smooth transition to just go ahead and ask him to move to right guard and start there until Samuel Cosmi's healthy. And then now you even have Nate Herbig. So I'm even starting to look at like Michael Dieter. Like, I mean, do you have even much of a chance of making the roster? Shouts out to Ben Standig. He pointed out the fact that Nate Herbig has 30 career interior offensive line starts and was expected to be Pittsburgh's starting center last season, but suffered a season-ending rotator cuff injury. Would think he's a part of the Cosmi replacement mix, which is the point that I just brought up. I think he could. But all I know is, man, at the very least, now we don't have to worry about Michael Dieter anymore. Michael Dieter may not even necessarily make the roster at this point, which is another sign of improvement. The fact that Dieter had to start 2 games for us last year because of an injury to Tyler Biadasz. But either way, he had to start 2 games for us. Now you have Trent and Nick as a backup guard, and this new signing as a backup center / backup guard. That, I mean, maybe he could even compete for that as well. So this pushes Michael Dieter out of the depth, out of the guys that, I mean, we'll see about 53-man roster in the first place, let alone active on game days. Like, that's how you know this offensive line has at the very least improved. You have a top 3, top 5 left tackle in Laramie Tunsil, and now the guy that started for center for you a couple of games last year is now probably not even going to make the roster. And just to review again, shouts out to Scott Jennings of Hogs Haven. Just to let you know, Nate Herbig was an undrafted free agent who was signed by the Philadelphia Eagles after the 2019 NFL Draft. Herbig suffered a torn rotator cuff last August and missed the entire 2024 season. He has started 30 games and played in 61 games total over 5 seasons. So this guy comes with plenty of experience, and again, he's still very young, and again, his best days may still be ahead of him. The Commanders are shuffling their offensive line after a January ACL tear for Samuel Cosmi and this month's trade for Laramie Tunsil. They restructured the contract of Andrew Wiley and could move him inside the guard or to backup tackle. Brandon Coleman was drafted to play left tackle, but he will likely be tried out at right tackle and guard to see where his best fit is. Y'all already know where I stand. I feel like he's best at guard, even though his arms are long. I feel like he's best at guard. Herbig has played both guard spots and will provide valuable depth if he doesn't win the starting job. And I like that. Like, if he doesn't win the starting job, which means like there's a chance that this guy is good enough to where maybe he does start until Samuel Cosmi gets back. Who knows? But either way, at the very least, worst case scenario, you got yourself a good player that makes your offensive line better, even if not as a starter, at the very least as depth. Also, shouts out to Ref the District, because I completely agree. He said this is a low-key, very good signing. Will really help the offensive line depth. I would personally argue, me as Rico of StreetScores would argue, this is one of our best value signings of the entire offseason, based off of like how much we're potentially paying this guy, what he's expected to do, what he was expected to do for a previous team starting level, but we're bringing him in here to clearly be depth right now. And at at best compete for a starting spot, which I don't have him in the lead for winning right now, you could argue this is probably one of our sneakiest steals in the entire free agency period. I'm telling y'all right now, y'all are going to grow to love this guy by training camp. Shouts out to Coach Matt at MV Scouting, because I agree with him as well. Offensive line is a weak link position group. The team doesn't intend to be in a situation where they have to start Trent Scott in a championship game again. Startable depth is as important as the top in talent. I completely agree. And even that first part, offensive line is a weak link position group. Basically, you're only as good as your worst player on your offensive line. When you have this much quality depth on your offensive line, it only makes your entire team better. And then again, the attitude he comes with, the mean streak, the nasty attitude, and then again, he's only 26 years old, probably just now entering his prime. This is arguably, again, in my opinion, a free agency steal. I mean, of course, this is not like as exciting as trading for Trey Hendrickson or even the trade for Deebo Samuel or Laramie Tunsil, but this is probably the next best thing right after that. When we're talking about like Adam Peters, the reason we made it to the NFC Championship last year was because Adam Peters was a sniper and arguably the best general manager at acquiring second and third tier level talent in free agency last year. This is one of those signings right here, where he may not necessarily be a first-tier guy, Myles Garrett, a Trey Hendrickson, Travarius Ward at corner that a lot of y'all guys wanted at different position groups, even like a Khalil Mack that I wanted. But when it comes to second and third-tier guys, this guy's literally as good as it comes. So I feel like we did an excellent job here. Bravo, Adam Peters. And one of my favorite signings so far this entire offseason. Now, moving on to the second half of this video, we added great depth at offensive line, maybe a potential guy that's going to compete for starting. But then we also lost an important piece to our defensive line, our edge rusher group, when Ian Rappaport announced reunion. Commanders free agency edge rusher Dante Fowler, one of the top players available, is signing with the Cowboys on a 1-year, $8 million deal, per the insiders. That's it, first of all, but he noted that a full circle moment as Fowler was in Dallas in 2022 to the 2023, and the deal was negotiated by Sean Kierman and Tom Panavelli, whatever. I mean, that doesn't even really matter. I just got caught reading the tweet right there. I should just edit that out. But either way, that's it. Like after all of that drama and chaos, that's all you signed for, dog? Like, for real. Come on, man. Ain't no way. You must have double that money in incentives somehow. Well, $8 million deal that can get up to $20 million, like something we've never seen before in incentives, man. Shouts out to DC Rising. He said the Commanders couldn't keep Dante Fowler for 1 year, $8 million. Bro had me out here thinking he wanted like 15 million plus based off of his tweets. And I agree, man. That was literally my first thought when I saw that Dante Fowler is going back to the Cowboys. Before I thought about anything Cowboys, before I thought about the fact that we're going to play against them twice a year now, which is going to be fun to see how that goes. That's going to be like an underlying storyline right there that, you know, us as Commanders fans are going to pay deeply attention to, but maybe not everybody else while they're watching the game. But my very first thought was, that's it? I mean, he must have really burned bridges with the Commanders after that Twitter rant, because he's getting less than DeMarcus Lawrence. And again, Dante Fowler had 10.5 sacks last year, like I've been mentioning all week in all of my videos, while DeMarcus Lawrence had just 13 sacks the past 3 seasons total. So either the Commanders just completely shut the door on his return and it wasn't even about the money, or Dante Fowler shut the door from his end and didn't care about what we had to offer after whatever our original offer was. That is what caused them to go on that Twitter rant in the first place. I don't know exactly, but this is crazy. Shouts out to Mark Bullock. He said Fowler heading back to Dallas to play Washington twice a year. Hey, man, we're about to talk about that. And he also said, wonder if he's extra motivated. I mean, be motivated all you want. We'll have a tough task beating Laramie Tunsil, though. I completely agree. Yes, sir. Now we get to play against them twice a year, at least this upcoming season. And all I'm saying is, make sure when he's on the field, run the ball to his side of the defensive line. Like, literally run right at him for me, please, and dare him to set the edge. I dare him. Now, we'll see what happens in obvious pass rushing downs, like Dante Fowler versus Ojulari on the outside on an obvious 3rd and long. Maybe he has the slight advantage there. But in any other scenario, I love our chances of with our offensive line going against Dante Fowler. Shouts out the Burgundy blog. He said, never thought Fowler was a mandatory or guaranteed re-signing, but he was your leading sack producer last year with 10.5 sacks. Next most was an off-ball linebacker in Frankie Louisville off of blitzing with 8, followed by Armstrong, who you're paying all of this money to, who only had 5. Now, granted, he missed a few games, but still, he only had 5 sacks last year. You can scheme up pressure, but you're going to need another guy that can do it on his own. I completely agree. So I'm not going to lie, though. Even though we got way better at stopping the run with our defensive line additions in free agency so far, we are for sure going to miss Dante Fowler's pass rush skills. Don't get me wrong. We have a bunch of edge setters and run stuffers right now all up and down our defensive line. But who can get a sack when we need it the most, when we're up 2 points with 1 minute left in the 4th quarter and our defense is on the field? As of right now, before the draft at least, Dorrance Armstrong is your only hope. I mean, at the very least, we're paying him like it. And he started to catch fire in the playoffs. I believe he had the most sacks for our entire team in the playoffs. And he shows some elite bend sometimes, especially in that Lions game. But can we expect him to do that throughout the course of an entire season and playoff run? And even if he can, best case scenario, Dante Fowler turns into what we hope he can be. If we only have one guy that can do it, offenses will just adjust their game plan, shift the offensive line to that side, on focus on stopping him, and then daring any other guy to step up and do it. So no matter which way you look at it, we at least need one more pass rush specialist that can come in on 3rd and longs and guarantee, or at the very least give us a high chance of getting after the quarterback. Because right now, again, I keep saying it, as long as our offense has the ball last, as long as the game is in the hands of Jaden Daniels, I'm excited. I'm very optimistic. Once the Falcons said heads, I already knew we won that game, especially once it landed on tails and I knew we got the ball back. I was like, the Falcons aren't going to see the ball. Jaden Daniels has the ball in overtime. We're winning this right now. But defensively, y'all saw that Saints game even before the Saints game. I have been worried all since last year that if our defense is on the field last, who's going to be the one to make the play to win the game for us? At best, we have to hope for bend but don't break, and hopefully we're up by more than the field goal and we can force them into like a 4th down, gotta get a touchdown situation. Like, that's our best case scenario on defense right now. We need a true game changer that can get to the quarterback. It would be lovely if one of these defensive tackles, especially like a Deron Payne that you're paying the most money on the entire team, or a Johnny Newton who you spent a very early 2nd round pick, nearly you could technically say like a late 1st round pick on. It would be lovely if one of those guys could consistently get to the quarterback, but they are defensive tackles, and I'm not really necessarily expecting either of those guys to be Chris Jones or Aaron Donald necessarily, but it would be nice. How about one of these edge rushers step up? Well, again, we brought in a bunch of run stopping edge setters because that was our biggest weakness last year, and we were like, all right, we'll bet. We didn't have at least 2 guys that could do it. How about we bring in like 5 this offseason? But as a result, we don't have much pass rushing. So, may I offer y'all a Georgia Bulldog, perhaps, in Azeez Ojulari, who is literally a 24-year-old version of Dante Fowler, in my opinion. Now, of course, to me, you can't go wrong by adding a bunch of Georgia Bulldogs to your team. I mean, case in point, the Eagles championship defense and even Jalen Hurts, Howie Roseman all admitted that the Georgia Bulldogs are the reason they won that championship, but we're not going to get to that right now. I warned y'all a couple of years ago about what would happen if a bunch of Georgia Bulldogs ended up on one team, but even beyond that, even if you take away the G from his back, he's literally Dante Fowler, in my opinion, but younger. But of course, he's just not as experienced because he is 6 years younger, but their skill sets are very identical. And at 24 years old, Ojulari still for sure has the potential to get even better as he gets into his prime. And like I discussed a couple of videos ago, when I provided the history and stats behind my theory, you could argue that Dante Fowler's 10.5 sack season was more so a product of the Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. system than the player himself. I literally dove into the stats and showed y'all all of the times that Dante Fowler has had very productive seasons. It's only really happened like 2 and maybe you can argue a half a time with 8 sacks he had one time. He had 10.5 last year. He had like 11 or 11.5 another year. And then he also had 8 like the year before that or something like that. Out of like the 8-10 years he's been in the NFL. So again, I made the argument that maybe it's more of a Dan Quinn Jones Jr. system that he was in, that he suddenly exploded for 10.5 sacks, whereas the year before I think he only had like 4. So maybe Ojulari can go from the dysfunctional New York Giants, come over here and be utilized to the very best of his abilities and put in advantageous situations as often as possible, like Dante Fowler was last year. And then he can replace Dante Fowler as the double-digit pass rush specialist, sack guy that comes in on obvious passing downs, 3rd and long, and gets after the quarterback when we need it. Do I want Azeez Ojulari out there on 1st down, 2nd down, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, 4th and inches, tush push? No, never. But when it's a 3rd and long, even a 2nd and long, give me Azeez Ojulari getting after the quarterback any day. For sure, sign me up for that. I mean, he's even had good games against us where he's constantly had pressure on our quarterbacks the past couple of years. I mean, we would know how serious his pass rushing is, man. And not only is he younger than Dante Fowler, but he's also way cheaper. Even though Dante Fowler got less than I expected, Ojulari is still projected to be way cheaper than even that. So you may be able to get him on like a 2-year deal worth about like maybe at most $5-6 million a year. I mean, barely even putting a dent in our cap space. So it's a really low risk, high reward situation in my personal opinion. I feel like this is like our best possible free agency signing that's maybe available out there. Outside, I mean, you could probably go ahead and throw in there like wide receiver Elijah Moore. I'm going to do a video on that. Maybe cornerback Asante Samuel Jr. I'm going to do a video on that. But there's a reason he's still available with his lack of tackling, his lack of physicality against the run game. But when it comes to pure coverage, especially back in 2023, that guy's a dog that I feel like we should add to the room. Those are probably my 3 top free agents that are available that I really want. And Azeez Ojulari may be number 1 out of that 3. I'm not going to lie, man. And you could even argue that Azeez Ojulari may be a more efficient pass rusher than even Dante Fowler was last year. Like Azeez Ojulari had 6 sacks last year while only playing in 11 games. Only starting in technically 5 of them according to Pro Football Reference. He had 6 sacks and 391 snaps, while Dante Fowler had 10.5 sacks and 563 snaps. So you may argue that Azeez Ojulari is the better player, and again, that Dante Fowler was more of a product of the system than Dante Fowler was just an elite pass rusher. And so going back to Dante Fowler, though, leaving Azeez Ojulari alone for a second, shouts out to Ben Standig. He pointed out the fact that Washington allowing Fowler to get away might seem curious after his 10.5 sack season, but the Commanders sought more well-rounded defensive ends. Fowler played a season-low snap percentage in the NFC Championship game because of his run game issues. The Commanders need more defensive end, but added lineman Dietrich Wise, Javon Kinlaw in free agency, and also a couple of other guys like Jacob Martin, and could draft some help at 29 overall in the draft. But that's a great point. To go back to that main point there, I didn't even notice that Fowler played his least percentage of snaps all season in that Eagles NFC Championship loss. Once we finally went against one of the best, arguably the best offensive lines in all of football, suddenly Dante Fowler's on the field way less compared to other opponents that we've gone against. If I would have realized that sooner, I would have been stopped talking about Dante Fowler in my videos all week and stop hoping that the Commanders will re-sign him. Because when you look at his snaps from that Eagles game and how much less he got in that game compared to all other games that season, you can tell that he was pretty much as good as gone by halftime in that Eagles game. Like, I would have told you by halftime of that Eagles game, if I noticed how little he played, that, oh yeah, we're not re-signing that guy in the offseason. Like, it was pretty much written on the wall before that Eagles NFC Championship game even ended that we weren't bringing him back. So it's not surprising to me, shouts out to Jay Daniels MVP, that the Commanders did not re-sign Dante Fowler. He was not great against the run the entire year and only played 16 snaps, 23% of the total snaps in the NFC Championship game. I love that this organization is run by adults who are about business. I completely agree. So maybe that offer that we originally offered him was super low because we were like, man, we're not about to pay a situational 3rd down pass rush specialist all of this money. I mean, I guess they probably weren't even willing to give him the $8 million that he got from the Cowboys, especially now that they have a bunch of certified defensive ends that can set the edge and stop the run. Last year, we were hoping that Cleveland Farrell and Dorrance Armstrong could basically do it on their own. Now they were like, oh, no. Now we're about 5-6 deep at run stop and edge setting edge rusher right now. So now there's like almost no way, unless we have the worst luck in NFL history, that even if we were to have signed Dante Fowler, that he would have been on the field on first and second downs. We can't pay you for what you did in the past. Like, thank you. You were underpaid technically for what you accomplished last year. I would agree to that. But the NFL is a business. We pay you based off of what we think you're going to do this upcoming season. But now, assuming that we don't get Azeez Ojulari, which I think would be a miss in free agency, it is safe to assume that we're more than likely going edge rusher in the first round, right? Like 29th overall pick, edge rusher in over a month, like, right? Like, it has to be that. Also, shouts out to Nick Corte, the compensatory pick guy on Twitter. Like, he's like the go-to guy for that. He tweeted, "We'll see what the APY for the compensatory pick purposes for determination of the precise round. But for now, Dante Fowler's signing shifts a 2026 comp pick from the Cowboys to the Commanders. So at the very least, Dante Fowler leaving potentially is going to get us maybe like a 6th or a 7th round comp pick that we will get in the 2026 draft. So, hey man, make sure you look forward to that." And also another good point came from Matt Miller, even though our boy Rio Robinson said this back on Wednesday, but Matt Miller tweeted on Friday, which reminded me of it. So bigger shouts out to Rio Robinson. But Matt Miller said on, again, Friday, "If you were drafted in the first round and failed to live up to expectations, then Dallas wants you." I mean, just this season alone, they've either signed or traded for 5 former first round picks that have not lived up to that. Well, technically 4.5 former first round picks that have not lived up to the hype that they were drafted at. Like, Javonte Williams is that half because he's a round 2 pick 3. Like, he was only 3 rounds away from being a first round pick. He was a dog for the Denver Broncos, but then the serious injury that he suffered, he hasn't necessarily been the same since. The Cowboys are banking on the fact that he'll bounce back with them. I'm not too mad at taking a chance on that one. Like, I mean, again, this guy didn't technically make the cut, but how about these other 4 guys that the Cowboys have brought in just this past week alone, be it free agency, signing them as a free agent, trading for them, whatever. You have linebacker Kenneth Murray Jr., first round pick of the Chargers, pick 23 overall. Then you also have cornerback Kaiir Elam out of Florida. He was a first round pick, 23rd overall by the Buffalo Bills in the 2022 draft. And Kenneth Murray Jr., just to let you know, was the 2020 draft. Then you have Peyton Turner, a defensive end that the Saints drafted in the first round in 2021, picked 28th overall. And then now you also have Dante Fowler Jr., who, if you don't remember, in 2015, the Jaguars drafted him in the first round, 3rd overall. Neither of those guys have lived up to their exact draft pick hype coming out of college. But at least Dante Fowler's been a productive player. I'm not taking anything away from him. But he was drafted by the Jaguars to basically be like the next Khalil Mack. Like one of the best edge rushers in the entire NFL. He was supposed to be Myles Garrett or something like that. Matter of fact, he was drafted higher than Khalil Mack was in his respective draft. So with this strategy, the Cowboys must both really believe in their own coaching staff, and they must think the rest of us have horrible coaching staffs and we're just stupid. Like, they're over there looking at the rest of us like, man, y'all don't know what y'all doing with all this talent. You see this talent? We can fix them. Hey, man, Cowboys, good luck with that one, man. There's a reason that they were even available for y'all to get, man. A lot of elite talents don't even hit free agency. You got to trade for them. That's why Laramie Tunsil is not just going to be available to sign, ever. A guy of that caliber. You have to trade for guys like that. So there's a reason that these first-round talents were even just sitting out there on the couch waiting for your call. But, hey, man, Cowboys fans, do what you're going to do. And, hey, if you're down on our defensive line situation, at least we're not out here moving like the Cowboys and also the Buffalo Bills. Shouts out to the Bills, because 2 of their new defensive line additions that they've added just this offseason, just a couple of days ago, both of them in defensive tackle Larry Ogunjobi, I believe that's how you pronounce that name, and Michael Hochit, whatever, however you pronounce that, both of them are suspended 6 games each for PEDs. So you can complain all you want about this defensive line situation. And again, I agree that we definitely need some pass rush boost to our defensive line. But hey, you could be like the Cowboys, you could be like the Buffalo Bills, or you could be like some of these teams out here that aren't doing anything. I mean, look at the Chiefs. Look at what the Chiefs have done this offseason. Even look at what the Ravens have done this offseason. Their biggest signing was a re-signing, arguably, in Ronnie Stanley. So, you know what I'm saying? A lot of people are complaining in the Commanders fan base. Maybe it wasn't the grocery list that you had going into free agency. But I'm telling you, we're one of the best, most improved teams this 2025 offseason. And I'm literally working on a video about how NFL national analysts and experts love our offseason so far. Like, we have grades from different places like Pro Football Focus and CBS and people like that. They love it. Like, we even have like some A pluses in there. At worst, A minuses. NFL Network literally gave us an A plus. Again, that's another video for another day. Stay tuned for that. Maybe I'll do that later tonight or tomorrow or something like that. But I still got to catch up on all these other videos. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know if you feel about everything discussed in the video. Please from that like button, to find the subscription button, to from the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Really appreciate y'all for supporting the videos, even though I'm late with a lot of these updates because I'm just so backed up on videos / busy. The fact that y'all still pull up and watch and support these videos, and then the fact that you make it this far in the video is insane. I really appreciate y'all. Salute to y'all. Again, shouts out to the 3 of y'all that donated to the Cash App like we mentioned earlier. Really appreciate y'all, boys, man. Matter of fact, we're going name by name, man. We're not about to sit here and just act like we're just gonna put them in one bet. Man, shouts out to my boy Chris T. Shouts out to my dog One Skins Fan for Life. Shouts out to my dog George Y. Man, really appreciate y'all. And as promised, your trivia fun fact for the day: kicker Joey Slye made 25 of his 30 field goal tries for the Commanders in 2022. Why is this fun fact trivia question daily calendar all so largely based in 2022? But either way, including 4 of 6 attempts from 50 yards and beyond. So shouts out to Joey Slye. We had a good one there. Didn't work out. Brandon McManus, long story. I'm not even about to get into that right now. But either way, man, really appreciate y'all again. Make sure you let me know in the comment section how you feel about us adding Nate Herbig and losing Dante Fowler. Do you agree that we need to target Azeez Ojulari? Do we need to go edge rusher in the first round, maybe even trade up for one of the elite edge rusher guys that may fall for whatever random red flag that a lot of these guys have in this draft? Let me know how y'all feel about all of that. I really appreciate y'all. Make sure y'all stay tuned for more content. I'm gonna catch y'all later. Leave a like on the way out. I'm out.